He is the host of Gen Z Hoops podcast and the Big Fellas podcast. We welcome John Hartofilis onto Hoopsology. How's it going, John?
It's going great. Thank you both, Matt, Justin. Thank you both so much for having me on.
No problem. So, John, I'm just doing a little bit of research on you and just your basketball knowledge. We have a lot to just pick your brain about just in the time we're in. Just a lot to discuss. So at first, I really want to just discuss kind of basketball as a whole. We understand you're an assistant coach at a high school. Is that correct?
Yes.
And just we want to get your impressions of just how the game has changed since the pandemic has hit. I mean, basketball fans know that they're watching it from a, I guess, professional view in terms of the NBA, the WNBA, but we haven't really seen the effects of the pandemic from necessarily a college or a high school perspective. So can you just elaborate on that in terms of how it's affected you personally, in terms of how you just coach your kids and just like your motivation and just feelings after the pandemic is over, and just in terms of will coaching stay the same and where you see things progressing?
Oh, 100%. And so me being a 20-year-old high school coach, it's definitely something where everything that I've kind of experienced in this high school space has been a little different. So I started coaching right after I graduated from high school. They asked me to come back and fill in for the then retired 20-year coach Curley, who was there for forever. And just since then, it's always been difficult. This season was obviously by far the most difficult because there was so much uncertainty it's funny, going into the summer, we were almost, we're definitely gonna have a season. Then football got pushed back, which then pushed us back. And there was always a new start date. December 15th, January 4th, to now where we're hoping to get started officially with an actual season after February 4th. So there's still a lot to be done before that actually happens, but it has changed a lot to how I relate to players, because normally my biggest role as an assistant, especially being younger and closer to them in age, is that I could hopefully get that personal relationship with them that most other coaches can't. Being older, while they're better authoritarians and better head coaches, I'd like to think that I do my best work being that relatable older brother, if you will. So there's, of course, a fine line between being a role model and being their friend. And that's obviously something that's probably the biggest challenge of me, getting through that every single day. But I do really, what the pandemic did for that was it took all that virtual. So I had Zoom sessions with them over the summer. We did try to get some games going. So in the summer, starting from July until October, when New Jersey shut down their completely, I'd take about 8 to 10 guys every single weekend to run it was an outdoor tournament at first, and then the last month it actually went indoor before they shut it down completely. So especially, I mean, just having from March to July, I hadn't even been inside a gym, let alone a court. So coaching was definitely very strange at that point. And then when we got inside the gym and there's actually refs with like, it's completely the way we remembered it. It was definitely really weird. And it's going to be something to overcome where we're going to have to get used to, okay, now this is actually what coaching's like. Because I've watched thousands of videos during the quarantine. I've tried to get better as much as I can, but nothing beats actually being there. So I'm really looking forward to what that might look like in the next few weeks.
And on that point, just coaching the kids like over Zoom virtually, because just with sports in general, it's more of just a in-person one-on-one as opposed to, I guess, virtual learning and just reading something out of a textbook. So how have you been? I guess my question is how have you changed your coaching style when you're doing it virtually? Is there stuff you're doing kind of differently compared to when you're one-on-one? You can actually like show them like a different technique, but virtually it's just a little impersonal when it's just over a technology like that.
Of course. I've had to get much better, I think, at really paying attention to my language. Normally when I'm talking to someone in person, you have the ability to say, well, you get to say something and then fix what you said, because you could tell from their face what the impact of what you just said has on them. Or, for example, the tone of your voice really tells 90% of what you mean to say. So now, though, over text, I have to be very cautious of, okay, if I say this text, how can he interpret this? Is it going to come off as constructive criticism or as aggressive criticism? Because in person, they'll have that relationship with me. When I talk to them, they know it's constructive. They know it's always like that. They can tell from my voice and everything. Over text, they don't know if I'm mad. They don't know if I'm upset at them. They can't understand that. So my biggest hurdle has definitely been paying much more attention to exactly the words I say and and most importantly, thinking, okay, how can these be interpreted by everyone?
John, I wanted to get your thoughts on from a coach's perspective, we talk a lot in the NBA, like last season, for example, the players getting a big break between March and when they finally started basketball again in the bubble in July. There's often this perception in the media, this maybe over concern, maybe not, about conditioning and players returning to playing after a long unplanned break like that. What's your perception as a coach of the reality of the risk there in returning to play after a long break?
Oh, it's definitely very real, and it's something that we could try as best as we can as high school coaches to get guys in the gym under COVID situations once a week, or have those Zoom workouts and keep on top of them. But it's obviously much different. I would say much worse, even for people at the high school level, because when you're in the NBA and you're professional, you have your own trainer. You've obviously gotten to that level. You've worked out, and you're able to be self-motivated. At 14, 15, 16, 17 years old, it's very difficult to do that. So that's what I would say my biggest challenge has been, and my job has been over the last few months, is making sure I can try to help them as much as they can. But it'll be very interesting to see who's in shape and who's not in shape the next few weeks when we finally start.
Absolutely. How have your players reacted to, have you gotten to speak with them since the news of practice returning and all of that? I mean, what has the response been from them?
So I felt like I dropped a Woj bomb when I sent the tweet into the group chat where they all went. It was a ballistic of liking the message and disbelief, and them all sharing it on their social media because they're so happy. So definitely a really positive reaction. I'm hearing it. It was obviously great for me. I sent it to all the other coaches. They some of them hadn't even heard of it yet. But the news broke on Twitter when our director of the league made a tweet out saying that we're returning to play. So they were definitely overjoyed. Up until this point, I've just been saying, so I coached the freshman team. They would have been playing JV this year. My whole mantra to them has been, you might not have a JV season. And then some of you, right, might never play basketball ever again, right? Because like a lot of players have a freshman JV season, and then only 5 of those 15 make it to the varsity level, let's say. So the very real chance is that if COVID takes away the season from us, a lot of you else will never play again. You have to be thinking varsity this whole way through instead of thinking about JV. And that's kind of been what I would hope they've taken that mindset and done work on their own, and will continue to do that, because we're planning to have a season. It could change tomorrow where they tweet out saying, okay, never mind, we're not having anything. Or we could get 2 games in and the same thing can happen. So what are you doing now to prepare yourself for the varsity level or just down the line? Because if we kind of, as people, overestimate what we can do in one day, but underestimate what we can do over a year, let's say. So a lot of them kind of just think, okay, let me just focus on the now instead of focusing on, okay, like down the line, which for them is the varsity level. For me, it's whether it's things with the podcast or getting into the sports industry. That's kind of my thing down the line. And for everyone, it's different. But what are you doing to prepare yourself for what's going on down the road?
An additional question regarding the kids on the varsity level. And if there's not a season, that's a year taken away from them in terms of sending that tape to a prospective college and getting a scholarship. How are they adjusting to that? Because I've always wondered, like, that's a full season of player development that's taken away. And I guess compared to college, in which you can redshirt, there's other things you can do. High school, you don't want to stay back for an additional senior year of high school. So how are players adjusting to that in terms of maybe there not being a basketball season for their senior year and them having to send out videos of maybe their junior or just previous years?
So when it comes to the idea of redshirting, I have seen that it looks like there's been an uptick in the number of seniors. Let's say they go to the prep school route. So you do see a lot of guys taking that as an option, which is something I wasn't really familiar with before COVID happened, but I've seen a lot of guys take that route, and it's for their best interest. And most times it's always been 50-50, and it's kind of been more about the player, but in terms of what are you going to do once you get to that prep school, right? How are you going to take that time? But now it's kind of a last resort where if you don't have a senior year, and no coaches have reached out to you before then, so many guys get all their offers in their senior year, where maybe you weren't playing much your junior year. You both get a lot better, and guys move on to where now you're in the starting 5. So now you lose that opportunity. For a lot of them, I have seen them take that route. But really, I would hope, and from what I've seen, that college coaches have been very, of course, cognizant of they're very aware of the world we live in, and what the last few months have the challenge they presented for all of us. So I would hope that the college coaches that I've seen have done a good job of it, but that college coaches everywhere are really taking the time to say, okay, send us film of you in other leagues, let's say, because we know you can't have a high school season. When you meet, like, let's figure out this, to do these Zoom interviews to really get to know you, because normally we'd have you in person at the big table, with the trophies all around the room, but we can't really do that right now to really get through to you. So how does a Zoom call work? It's really it's on everyone to try to make the best out of the situation that we're in, and hopefully it's made a lot easier for us with seasons actually taking place.
Hey, thanks for checking out Hoopsology. If you had any thoughts on the topic we just discussed, we'd love to hear them in the comments section below. If you liked the video, please consider liking and sharing the video. It really helps us out. We appreciate it, and we will see you guys for the next video.